All right, good evening again, everybody. I'm Chuck Guglielmo, and welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Chuck, where it's a half-hour weekly show where we talk with interesting people. And today my guest is Steve Locy. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Steve Locy, of course, is from Jefferson, and we'll get a little information on him. And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end of the interview, as he was one of 12, I believe, participants from Ashtabula County in the Boston Marathon. So we'll try to pick your brain a little bit on that. So Steve, why don't you start by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself?
I've been an Ashtabula County resident all my life. I'm 54 years old. Graduated from Jefferson in 1980. Went on to school and graduated from Slippery Rock University in 1985 and came back to Jefferson for a couple years. Actually was RIFT back in the 80s when they RIFT a lot of teachers. Went to Florida for a year, then was fortunate to get a call from Larry Braga to come back and teach at Jefferson, and I've been there ever since.
And I believe back in your days at Jefferson High School, obviously running in the Boston Marathon, you were probably a track star.
I don't know if I was a track star. I ran track and cross country and also played basketball. So, and then in college at Slippery Rock University, I ran track and cross country there.
Of course, Steve, you're also a teacher, you're an athletic director, a longtime athletic director. Matter of fact, I had Bill Fells in here a couple of weeks ago, and when he retired, he was the longest running athletic director at Ashtabula County, and I says, I believe Steve Locy might be now. Is that?
I'm sure probably I am. We do switch positions, or people switch positions after quite a few years. I believe this is my 20th year, I believe.
20 years just as an athletic director.
Right, as the athletic director.
Wow. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. But let's start with teaching now. What do you teach and where?
I teach freshman health. I teach 3 classes in the morning, and then I have an advanced PE class, and then I have athletic duties in the afternoon.
And this is at the high school itself?
Yes, it's at the high school. Yes.
So 9 through 12?
9th grade health is what I teach.
9th grade health. Okay, and obviously you like teaching?
Oh, I love teaching. I love the classroom. I've always loved the classroom. I've taught a variety of subjects throughout my career. I have an elementary ed certificate, so back in the old days, if they had one extra junior high math class or one extra junior high English class or whatever it would be, I usually picked it up. But I do teach mostly health and have taught mostly health for probably the last 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about what teaching is like today versus when you first started, because you know how we always hear things are a lot different today.
Oh, it is a lot different. We're probably a little bit more advanced as we use a lot more technology in the classrooms, and that really makes it nice in my field in health education because there's always something changing with health, so we try to keep them up to date. I mean, I have reference books back in my classroom, and they ask me every year, do you need new textbooks? And I say no. I can pull the information, the basic information is the same. I can pull the rest of it off of there, and those textbooks are probably 15, 16 years old. So, but they give us the basis, and it's changed. And I don't think there's as much parent involvement with the students, which sometimes makes it difficult. But kids are still kids, and if you can just latch on to something that they will be interested in, and like I tell them with mine, if you don't have your health, it don't matter how old you are, or whatever. I feel it's the most important subject that I teach. I used to say that when I taught reading too, because you had to read it, no matter what you did, whether it was math or science or social studies, you always had to read. Well, now with teaching health, again, like I said, you got to be healthy. And unfortunately in our society with all the extras that are out there, sometimes that becomes difficult. So I try to teach them the importance of, staying healthy, eating right, exercising, and so on and so forth.
So how many principals and superintendents have you worked for?
A lot. I was discussing that with someone today, and I believe it's probably been in the double digits with the principals. And if you had assistant principals, that would definitely be. Superintendents, I believe it's been 5 or 6. So.
Wow. And when they come in, do you always notice a change in philosophy?
Oh, yeah. There's been a number of It's interesting because there's been a number of superintendents that I've had. There was a couple superintendents that we had that were very hands-on because they were former athletes, and they really wanted to know what was going on. There's others that let you sit back and do your job. The same with principals. Right now our principal, Jeremy Huber, it was a fantastic athlete in high school and college, basketball player and an outstanding basketball coach. But he pretty much lets me do my job. There's been others that like I said, have been more hands-on. So it's different. You sort of feel them out, and they feel you out, and you go from there. So.
Now, you said you teach health in the morning, and then you do your AD duties in the afternoon.
In the afternoon, yes.
Talk a little bit about being an athletic director in terms of how tough it is, just from schedule-wise, making out schedules for all the multiple sports. Of course, you're in the All-American Conference, so it's not as difficult for you, I wouldn't think, as it is for the guy here in Conneaut, Mr. Campbell, when he was in a non-conference. But how difficult is it making out those schedules, and then in the spring sports getting all these cancellations and rescheduling?
It's difficult, but once you get a system going, the first couple of years, obviously, it was extremely difficult. But now you have a relationship with the athletic directors and can feel them out, and you try to reach out to certain schools, even though we're in the conference. I've always reached out to either when it was Joel or Jimmy Campbell here, because it's a local rivalry, and we like to play Conneaut. I love some of the Conneaut coaches. Some of the Conneaut coaches are my best friends. I've tried to pursue Steve Wilhonick to come to Jefferson numerous times when we've had coaching openings. Never could get him there, by the way. But we try to schedule local as much as possible to keep the travel down for the students as well as the parents. We were independent for probably about 4 years, and it was extremely difficult. Trying to fill out a 22 game schedule in basketball or a 10 game schedule in football, because most of your leagues have, for football example, they have league schedules for 3 through 10. So I remember one year when we were independent, we were looking into Canada to try to get a football game. We finally ended up getting a school that had just started, had just broken off, and was a private school out of Pittsburgh. That was called the Obama School. And we ended up playing them. Well, they ended up being pretty doggone good. And that was a year that we were 7-2 going into that game, and they handed it to us week 10. So, it's very difficult. But again, with the league, and it makes it a lot easier. And I know it's not the ideal situation for Conneaut, but I had thought of them with Pennsylvania being so close for many, many years, and them playing many Pennsylvania schools. I think it's going to work out for them very, very well. And not that they have the best of both worlds, but again, they still do get to compete in the Ohio High School Athletic,
Right.
Postseason tournaments, which is nice. And they're also going to have some independent games, I'm sure, as well. So, I've talked to Jimmy about, scheduling us again for basketball and baseball and those type of sports. So,
I remember, of course, Conneaut not being in a conference for about 8 years. I think it's been 2007 when the NEC folded, and of course everybody here is frustrated, as I was too. But I was thinking back in your day when we did have the NEC. I'm thinking maybe even Jefferson wasn't part of the NEC at one time. Am I right or am I wrong?
We were in for a while, and a lot is driven by football succch, and because
that's the major
right.
That's
That's such a physical sport.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of your individual sports, whether it be golf, cross country, or those volleyball, you have 6 girls on a team, but usually one might dominate or something. Volleyball or with softball with pitching or something of that. But football, you got to have 11, 12, 14 kids that are physically capable, and when you can draw from, for example, back in the old days when it was Asheville High School, and they could draw from 500 kids, and Conneaut and Jefferson and those sizes were drawing from 200. It was difficult, and I know we got it handed to us quite a few times, and so I wasn't part of that when we did get out, but we were in the GRC for quite a while, and it's nice to a certain extent to be the so-called big fish in the small pond, but then again, what makes our league so nice that we're in about the middle of the pack. So, if we have a very good team, then we're successful. If we don't, then we're at least competitive, but, so, and lots of times with athletics, and especially in the smaller communities, such as the Conneaut, such as the Jefferson, such as the Edgewood's, you're going to get a cycle. You're going to get a cycle of kids. And if you get a good group, and you work with them as freshmen and sophomores and juniors, then as seniors they can be very successful. I mean, Conneaut's had it with their softball teams. They've had it back with the basketball teams way back when they had the Pape and the Cox and, and that. And, you're very fortunate to do that. I mean, our girls softball team is outstanding right now.
Undefeated.
And hopefully they will get back down to the state tournament. And hopefully get into the finals this year. They were in the Final Four, but hopefully their goal obviously is to win the state title, and they have a very good opportunity.
That would be very nice.
But that's a group that was, they were good as sophomores. They were better last year, obviously, not state runner up, Final Four, and again their ultimate goal was to be to the state finals. Now, I don't know, but I don't think they'll be as good or as successful next year. Because they lose a lot of girls. They lose. Obviously, Alyssa Irons is one of the top pitchers in the state of Ohio. There's no doubt about it.
11-0.
She's signed with Hofstra, and she got a scholarship to Hofstra, and I know she has a tryout for the U.S. Olympic team. So, I mean, she's top notch. So
You mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And obviously with softball, the pitcher does dominate often. So
You mentioned cycles. The schools can go through cycles, and right now, the Jefferson Falcons are in that good cycle in multiple sports. You've had some great sports teams: football, boys basketball. I mean, and soccer's even good right now. And you just mentioned the girls softball team. So some good sports runs right now in Jefferson.
Right, and a lot of them are families that have come through, or we got for the basketball, we got the Hitchcock, Sammy Hitchcock, and I now have his sister playing on she started as a freshman last few games for us at the girls level. So, that you have the Hitchcocks, you have these kids that have come in and really put the time in and put the effort in. And they're just good athletes. I mean, Sam was a great athlete in football until he got hurt with some of the concussions, and now he's doing track. And you got the Blake Payne, who's one of the top high jumpers in the area, as well as a basketball player. And Sam Chaney, I know, who played varsity basketball for him this year and had a nice year, is one of the best players on the baseball team. So.
Your star player, Emily Smock.
Yeah, right. My star player, Emily Smock, is the starting second baseman, and has started there for a couple of years. So, she's a good athlete. And
did she just go over 1,000 points this
yes,
year in basketball?
She did go over 1,000 points, which is quite an accomplishment. There's no doubt about it. And she showed great leadership for us this year. It was sort of difficult for her because everybody knew she was our top scorer, and there were times where she had 2 and even 3 people on her. Mm-hmm. But she never pouted, never sulked, and played hard the whole time. So,
speaking of Emily Smock, I thought maybe she'd get Player of the Year, and not to take anything away from Lindsay Maley of Geneva, because she's an outstanding basketball player. The reason I thought maybe Emily, because she played a full season where Lindsay was missed, I think, the first 10 games or so. Any thoughts on that?
I don't vote on it.
I was just wondering, do you get to vote on your own team?
No, you don't get to vote for your own. You don't get to vote for your own player in the voting. And Emily was deserving, but Lindsay had a great career too. And it wasn't. I'm sure Lindsay would have loved to have been out there 22, 24 games. I mean, it wasn't something that she did by choice. Only, and she did play in 17 games, I believe. It was fortunate, I guess, but unfortunate she came back against us. Which was interesting. But she was a nice player, and Emily's a nice player, and I guess you know, the coaches chose Lindsay, and that's where we go with that. So
My guest is Steve Locy from the Jefferson Area School District. Steve, let's go to coaching now. I remember you as a boys basketball coach. You mentioned the Ken Houston teams here back in the mid-'90s. So you started off coaching boys basketball. Was that the first coaching assignment?
I coached junior high basketball, and I coached, a little bit of everything there. And at the different levels, I coached JV basketball for a few years for Larry Daniels, and then took over for when he had a 2-year stint, and then I took over in, I believe, 1992 and 93, and was the boys coach for 18 years.
Was Richard your JV coach at the
Jim
time?
Richards was my JV coach for numerous years. Jim Richards was a legend in my eyes. I learned a lot from Jim Richards. He was the boys track coach when I ran, so he was my coach. And then when I took over the girls track program, he was obviously coaching with me, and I learned immense amount of things from Jim Richards. He was always so organized. And actually, the athletic director's job I took over from Jim. When Larry Carlson retired, Jim Richards took over for 1 year, found out it wasn't his cup of tea, and decided to get out, and that's when I took over the athletic director's job.
When you were coaching boys basketball, what would you say was the number one thing you like to stress to your team?
Fundamentals. I mean, you have to do the little things to be successful. There's no doubt about it. You have to, everybody loves the three-point shot. Everybody loves the running up and down the floor, but you still got to stop the other team. My philosophy was also if they don't score, you can't lose. So, you got to play all aspects of the game and handle the basketball. And the number one thing is play hard,
And give the effort.
And give the effort, right. May not be the best player out there, but as long as you give 110% and dive after that loose ball or give your honest effort, then, everybody's got to be happy. The fans are going to be happy, your parents are going to be happy, and you should be happy.
Steve, are you a fan of the three-point shot, or do you like to pound the ball inside?
I think you have to have both, but I do like the excitement of the three ball. I mean, one thing with the three ball, you're never out of a game. But you, on the opposite side of that, you can shoot yourself out of the game too if you shoot too many threes and obviously are not successful at it. It's definitely exciting with that. If you watched the Cavaliers last night, some of the threes they made, and it almost cost them some of the threes they shot and didn't make. So, but it's an exciting thing, and one thing about it, the kids enjoy it. So they probably will be a little bit more successful here in the future because it's very difficult to get a kid to go down and work on the drop step in the low post and the low post moves. But when they pick up a ball by themselves, they will shoot it. So hopefully they're practicing all the fundamentals, but shooting is something you can do on your own. So
You think we'll ever see a shot clock in high school, and would you be in favor of it?
No, I don't. I think most of the teams do run up and down the floor, and we don't have a shot clock situation. Would I be in favor of it? I don't think it would really matter, depending on what, whether it was a 24-second shot clock or a 30-second shot clock like you've had in college at times. And I don't think it would make a big difference one way or the other, because you just don't have that many teams that run, very delayed type offenses. So it's more of an up and down game.
So you coached the boys team for how many years?
18.
18, and now you're coaching the Falcon girls basketball team. How was that transition for you?
It was interesting. It was interesting. The big thing was that when I took over was learning that what the girls knew as opposed to the boys, and how they would respond and so on and so forth. And we really struggled because I put in somewhat of a new system that I had put in with the boys, and it was difficult to start with. I think we were 1-11, and then went on a major win streak and ended up in the district finals against Geneva. So it worked out, You know, we were district finals, which we hadn't been for 10 years in the girls program or something like that. So then we lost a number of girls. Jessica Becker, who was my point guard, which probably if you were developing a team, I would believe the point guard is the most important person on the floor. I mean, if they can control the tempo, they can control the basketball.
Like the quarterback.
Right, exactly. If they can do that, then you can be successful. You know, we lost her, and Deanna Comp, who gave us 110%, another three-sport athlete that was very, very good, and left us, you know, with Emily, which made it a little difficult this year, and we struggled at times, but it wasn't terrible. I mean, you know, we won 8 games and won a sectional game, so, but we are young. We are young, and I think we'll be all right here in the future.
Covering and watching a lot of girls basketball, they play just as hard as the boys, don't you think?
Oh, I think sometimes they play harder. I really do. You know, the girls don't worry about a lot of the little details and this and that. I don't think they look at the box scores as much. They don't look at those type of things. They just go out and play. And the one thing about the girls, if you can get them to believe in you, I think they'll give you all they have and more. Mm-hmm. You know, if they believe in what you're saying and what you're doing, you know, I really think you can be successful, and it's fun. It's fun coaching them. Sometimes it's a little emotional, you know. I mean, I can remember the first time I sort of raised my voice at one of them. They almost teared up a little bit, and I was like, well, okay. But having 3 daughters, I sort of understood that a little bit too. So anyway.
Yeah, you threw me off. What was I going to say? Well, let's go to the Boston Marathon now. You were a participant, one of 12 Ashtabula County residents to participate in the Boston Marathon. Was this your first?
Yes, this was my first time.
What led you to want to do that? 26 miles, right?
Right, 26.2 miles.
Less than 4 hours.
Right.
That's like running from Conneaut to Geneva.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, without stopping.
Obviously, through high school, through college, I was a distance runner. So I ran distance, obviously not the marathon distance. But about 4 or 5 years ago, when I got out of coaching basketball and everything else, I decided, you know, I wanted to do something competitive. So I got back into running and started with the 5Ks, started with the 10Ks, and it just sort of worked its way up to half marathons, and I was quite successful at that level. And so probably it was about 4 years ago, I decided to try the Columbus Marathon. Well, I trained and got hurt just before it, but still ran it. Was not as successful as I wanted to be, and so I decided, you know what, I'm going to try this again. Well, I tried it again and was able, and it was probably about 3 years ago I ran my first Columbus Marathon and was able to qualify. Well, that was for this year. So we have a very, very good contingent of distance runners here with the Ashtabula Distance Runners Club. We have people from just about all over. One of the guys here that lives in Conneaut, Tom West, runs with us a lot. And it's nice because we get together on the weekends and a lot of our long runs are together, and you know, we'll meet up at races and so on and so forth. As far as Boston, I had a training partner that basically we did all the hard workouts on Tuesdays and Thursdays and our long runs on Saturdays and Sundays together, which was Eric Van Voort, who's a coach at a coach at Lakeside, a junior high coach at Lakeside. And we had a teacher from both Geneva and Edgewood that ran. So it was a great contingent.
Wrestling coach at Edgewood, right?
Right, Greg Stover. And also Sharon Daugherty that teaches at Edgewood. And so it was great. I was the old guy in the whole crew, but that was fine. But you know, it's basically the epitome for distance runners. And I will say this, it was all that and more. It was an amazing, amazing weekend.
So when did you go to Boston?
My wife and I flew in on Friday. And I hadn't been to Boston in 35 years. The last time I was in Boston, I was at Slippery Rock, and we went to Holy Cross University to run. and that was the last time I was in Boston. That was only for like a day and a half. But we went there, and she sort of had mapped a few things out that she wanted to see, and so on and so forth. But she was very hesitant about, well, I want to go here, I want to do this sightseeing and do that, because she knew I was running the marathon. But it was great. It was fantastic. It was basically the first time that I had been on a subway, the transit and everything else, and that system was amazing. And the people just treat you like your heroes. The day after we were running the marathon, and we, after we had finished, and I was still in my medal on, I was walking through town, and they were coming up, hey, congratulations, high fives, little kids on the subway as we were riding back to the hotel, came up and high-fived me, and hey, you're great, you're fantastic, thanks for coming into town and running our marathon, and then the one kid snickered, yeah, and we got out of school because of it, so, but I've seen estimates since in the Boston papers and stuff that there was over 500,000 people lining the streets to watch it, and there were. It was, and it's such a unique marathon because they bus you out 27 miles, and you start, and it's basically a straight line, and you run into Boston through 7 different communities, and
those spectators, Steve, they're the ones providing you with water as you're running?
Well, they will have water stations and Gatorade every 2 miles, but all along the route, they had water. The spectators had water for you. They had oranges. They had sponges because it was very hot.
Unusually hot.
Right, extremely hot. 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks before we ran, the Saturday before, it was 19 degrees that we did our long run in, and so we ran there, and it was like 72 degrees. So it was extremely hot, but it was fantastic. I happened to, actually my cross-country coach at Slippery Rock, the last year I was there, a new coach had come in, and he was still there. So I was talking to him, and he ended up giving me a singlet to run in that had Slippery Rock on it. So they were yelling the Rock the entire 26 miles. I mean, people were yelling, go Rock, and it was just amazing. The response in the town. They shut the town down, and the town enhances the whole experience. And, after doing it, there were people said, well, you're going to go back and do it again. Oh, there's no doubt. It's definitely something, it was like the Super Bowl for me. So,
the 26 miles, the roads, flat, are they different? Any hills? Turns?
This course is very unique because it was pretty much straight, not a whole lot of turns one way or the other. That's one thing that was unique, but the downhill is at the beginning of the race. So the first couple miles is a gradual downhill, and then they have what's called Heartbreak Hill, which is in the community of Newton, which is a hill that goes really high up. So they call it Heartbreak Hill for a reason, because at about 20 miles, you're about ready to drop over anyway.
I was just going to ask you.
And so, you just got to make it through it. So,
how did you feel after the 26 miles?
I did not feel all that bad. I really didn't. I think it was the emotion of everything and the crowd and everything kept me going the whole time. And I had trained for it. I mean, we had trained. We had an 18-week training program. So, and it wasn't the first marathon that I had run, and I was just thrilled to finish and be part of it.
What was the security like?
Amazing. They were everywhere, and I again believe that they had. I saw the figure like 65,000, security officers. I mean, they had guy in militia gear. They had everywhere else. Now supposedly they had even snipers on roofs and everything else. And we talked to one of the locals the day after, and my wife did and said something to the effect of, why do the people of Boston, take to these people so well? I mean, why do they treat the runners so nicely? They always treat people this nicely in this town. And the guy said after the 2013 bombing, they were afraid they had lost the glamour of the race, and they had thought they had lost the people coming back, and they would never get the runners to come back. okay? And now the runners have come back and they've really, enhanced the city. I mean, again, talking statistics, I saw where the running pumps $189 million into the city for the weekend. So, it's a big event for them too. So, to the restaurant and the owners and everything else. So, but it was just fantastic. It was like we stayed, a number of us from Ashtabula County stayed in a hotel that was about 6 miles from Boston, and they knew that the hotel knew we were staying there, and they had a breakfast buffet in the mornings that usually started at 6:30, 7 o'clock. On that morning of the Boston Marathon, they set everything out at 5 o'clock for us and gave us a little goodie bag to take with us and everything else. I mean, like I said, it was just amazing. Great experience.
How much in advance did you have to apply for this?
There is I believe it's in September of the year before. It's quite a long period of time, and they have certain standards. What it is, you have to reach a certain time to qualify. They have qualifying times for each age group, and so if you're very close, they cut off like 3,000 runners this year who, even though they had the qualifying time, they were too close to the qualifying time. So let's say your qualifying time, you had to run 3 hours and 20 minutes. Okay. Obviously, if you ran 3 hours and 10 minutes, you were definitely going to get in. But if you ran 3 hours and 9 minutes or 3 hours and 8 minutes, you might get in and you might not. So the closer you did. But I definitely qualified. I'm 18 minutes under my qualifying time for next year. So
great job. And you're going back next year?
Yes, I'm going back next year.
You'll be 55.
Yes, I'll be 55, moving up to the
puts you in another group?
next age group. Yes,
I thought I saw that on the internet where 50 to 54, you were the cutoff in this age group.
Right.
Yeah.
I was the old man in that age group, yes.
Let me close with this, Steve, because you're a big basketball fan. Do you think the Cleveland Cavaliers can win the championship?
I believe so. I truly believe that, if they play as a team. I was a little worried here the last few weeks with Kyrie Irving and ball in his hands. I think he handles the ball a little bit too much. And I'd like to see it in LeBron's hand and him be the facilitator because he does such a great job with it. They may get some help. I mean, they were obviously last year with the injury of Love and the injury of Irving, they struggled. I just saw here before I came that Curry's out for at least 2 weeks, and they'll go and reevaluate there. So
I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Okay.
So you gotta be good and you gotta be lucky. You sort of.
You do have to be a little bit lucky. As Kyrie got the midcourt shot, turned out to be the difference of the game, really.
Right, exactly. And you don't realize that, or if you watch the entire game, the free throw shooter Drummond, who actually made a free throw, and the guy had the lane violation. And I'm thinking I was thinking like a coach at that time. I'm thinking this game's close. Well, that lane violation, that 1 point they took off the board, make the difference, and it almost did.
Every point makes a difference.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Well, Steve, this has been fun.
Yes.
Appreciate you coming in.
All right, I thank you very much.
Steve Locy, the teacher, coach, athletic director, and Boston Marathon runner, my guest today. We're going to talk bodybuilding next week on Around the Town with Chuck. Have a good evening.